Hi, Bill. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh,
Thanks so much for the
it's
invite.
it's too fake because I feel like I feel like you're one of my longtime friend, and I feel like you're definitely one of the smartest people I know. And
Yeah.
today I don't like when I'm like reading this intro that I just feel like I feel like I didn't really like quite understand what you were doing on on our professional level until like recently when we started talking about like your new company. So Bill, like to give the audience a little background of Bill. So Bill is the CEO of Generative Alpha. He was a successful quant portfolio manager with billion-dollar AUM trading global equity in Millennium Fund. He graduated from Stanford with a math and AI PhD, also worked at Citadel Point72 as quant AI researcher and Google Brain, where he participated in the discovery of transformer architecture. So, Bill, do you want to share a little bit more about yourself to the audience?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, a full
Uh,
disclosure, I'm an investor in this company. But anyway, keep
yeah.
going. Sorry.
Yeah. And thank you. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Yeah. First of all, yeah, maybe a little bit about my story. Back in the days in 2015, I came to Stanford to do my PhD, and yeah, I was very fortunate to work with basically the best professors in the field, probably like stats optimization, who are basically very very successful even in like quant finance back in the days. Like David Donahoe and Stephen Boyd, and I spent quite some time like doing research on like quant finance and what's the new technology, and I realized clearly there's only one thing I should work on, which is deep learning. So I just spent most of my PhD on deep learning, and I actually started a club back in the days with a friend of mine who is now a Cresta CTO. Our club is called AI Plus. We started it from 2015 and ran it all the way to when I graduated from PhD. And throughout that journey, I learned basically at least the last generation of AI before ChatGPT and all that is more like a vertical tool that empower productivity. So our thesis is AI should be augmented with the vertical industry like finance, right? So I choose AI plus finance as kind of a direction I want to work on since very early days in my PhD. Um, and I was thinking, okay, so what problems should I conquer? So in finance, one of the early problems that people care about is like gathering very accurate information by reading a lot of different documents. Like you can do Google search, but you get like maybe 100 articles, and it takes a human maybe a few days of time to go over all these articles and like summarize all the relevant information to something that say their boss can actually read. So I went to Google Brain in 2016 to address this problem. It's called question answering or like reading comprehension. At that time, we were working on Wikipedia dataset, and that's before the transformer paper came out. So we are still trying basically LSTM with attention on top. That's a time where it's very interesting. We already have attention as like a simple step, but we do not understand the self-attention as a layer. So throughout the summer, I work at Google Brain. Uh, like multiple people are trying. The most successful ones are clearly Ashish's group. They end up publish this famous paper, "Attention is all you need." I was also trying basically attention on top of LSTM, and then realized, okay, LSTM seems to be the bottleneck. It only memorize maybe like last 100 tokens, and to go beyond that, you uh, kind of get stuck. And then I was talking to Ashish. They already have this vague idea. Okay, we should try like self attention. So I basically listened to his advice and tried the same architecture on question answering. And I have this discovery that is very interesting. So I use exact same architecture that worked on machine translation. Not even worked. It's like still trying on machine translation, and immediately it like has very significant progress on like question answering on Wikipedia, which to me is like a very far away task. So that's the time of enlightenment that I realized, oh, actually there exists this kind of universal structure that can work on a lot of different natural language tasks. And later that understanding gets published through like the work of like for example BERT and the T5, and then now we have like GPT 1, 2, 3, 4, and everyone sees the power of this.
Totally. Okay, so I want to unpack this experience a little bit. So one of your most recent experience is like beside the Google Brain was you were working at a quant fund. And for the audience who may not be very familiar with quant fund, like what does it do, and then what was your role in it, and how does like what were some kind of insights that you've learned during this experience that kind of shape you into developing your own um program for generative alpha.
Yeah. So in terms of quant fund, it's basically places like Citadel, Two Sigma, D-Shao, Renaissance, this kind of place where basically it's a smart math, computer science physicist working on financial problems, and more specifically short-term prediction financial problems, where they try to rely on mostly data from the market. For example, one clear example is order book, which is relatively high frequency, and another example is like the daily price volume that you also see on Yahoo Finance, that.
Mm,
And for quant, there is like multiple different styles, from like a very fast trading on millisecond, all the way to people who trade like multiple days to even quarters, which is where I working. We call it like mid frequency investing. And overall, I consider us as quant as people who don't know investing at all, only know like data science, math, and we apply all these techniques onto data from the market and try to discover some statistically significant result and apply those results through like a control framework to generate some trading policies that actually basically build a trading robot that do action. So throughout my
mhm,
description, you can realize it's kind of a bit narrow in terms of the framework, right? You need investment strategy that is kind of back testable, which means you need things that have statistical significance, which means it needs to be something that happened a lot in history. And if
mm,
you look at what happened in last maybe 3 or 4 years, we are experiencing a very fast changing world. Over the last at least 10 years, we never experienced like say, such a high interest regime. We never experienced a real inflation. And a lot of microenvironment is very different from before. And we have this new wave of AI that also is much bigger than all the previous ones. So the like say surge of NVIDIA is kind of like something it's very hard for quant to capture. And there are a lot of like new disruptive technology that is also kind of only an idea that you need to understand through logic and cannot understand through like data and look at history. So I have this analog that building a quant trading strategy is essentially like driving by looking at your back mirror. And
mm.
yeah, you just look at the history and try to think what worked on history and try to extrapolate what kind of ideas that worked on history might have a chance to work in future.
By like what works in the history? Can you give us an example?
For example, a very old fashioned idea is momentum. That's
Mm,
like basically you can invest in the stocks that is the best performing ones over the last year and bet
mm,
on them. And generically, in history, it shows it works slightly better than if you bet on random stocks. That's kind of a back testable idea that you can evaluate over, I guess, the last 30 years of market, and you notice at least over the like more ancient 20 years, it works pretty well until like more people discover it and it becomes a well-known factor.
mm. So basically, you're saying like if a stock was performed really good last year, and then it should be also perform well this year. Is that like the one of the prediction benchmark? Um, like or how? What are some characteristic are you guys looking for to or like data points that you're trying to collect to make smart decision in terms of investing?
Okay, let me explain my old job's approach and then explain our current approach. In quant trading, the approach is more like look at data and then run the data through history and evaluate whether that data worked on history and look at, for example, the Sharpe ratio of that strategy in history, and then think, okay, does this idea truly have a ground to work in the future? And have been doing this multiple times in like Point72 in Citadel, and most recently in Millennium, where I built a team from ground up. And our team is like trading mostly US equity, like a few thousand stocks all at once. And we try to like capture this very small statistical significance over a few thousand stocks. We like say every day long like 1 to 2,000 stocks and short 1 to 2,000 stocks. Make sure our overall strategy is like market neutral, do not have exposure, and we try to bet on this small direction. Let's say momentum can slightly outperform like a benchmark type of ideas. Of course, like momentum is not a real thing we bet on because it's so well known. But that's the example of my older approach. It's like just a kind of like a pick up people and pick up like a small like $1 bills in front of like a steaming roller coaster, which is like the big events moving around. So you want to like move very fast to pick up all the money before you get crashed by that roller coaster. That's kind of the game we're playing. And now with the new company, we're trying to really participate in the harder part of the game, which is understand the whole financial world. Try to build a financial world model, understanding how human thinks and what kind of questions human ask as investors, and try to answer them and potentially automate part of their thinking process by machine, which is both the old-fashioned mathematical formula-based machine approach and the new style like GPT-4 or even GPT-5 in the future type of approach.
Can you show us a product?
Yeah, of course. Let me share my screen. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'll show you like maybe like which this is a thing I try to produce in the middle of the way. Which company produced Majero and the fat losing drug, just in case I misspelled the Majero. The fat losing drug, and what is the revenue from this drug, and what is the total revenue of this company last year. Let's see what happens. I think I probably misspelled Majero, so let's see if our AI can figure it out. Okay. Oh yeah, actually I didn't. Right, this is Majero. That's correct. So Eli Lilly is the company behind. We have like a quick thinker that goes through the web and gets the result very very fast. And we have a slow thinker that is reading all the different sources in a very reliable way and show the result by like basically reading a few hundred different documents, some from the internet, some from public financial domains like SEC filing and earning call transcript. You can see the slow thinker tries to like put more structure into the answer and try to give you useful things like a table of revenue and show you what's the drug and show you when the FDA approves it for like both diabetes and for obesity. Yeah, so this is one of the product we build that mostly is for everyone who wants to ask financial questions and try to get understanding of the financial world. There's another product that we build which is like understanding private PDF. So This one is more for like people who trade, I guess, with like writing programs. So here, one of the use case is a lot of people are like programmers in quant trading. They are not trained as like a strong mathematician, so they feel really painful like reading new academic papers, and their workflow is basically take some Python code and put it into their code workflow and then do trial and error. At least more the junior quant researchers. So we built a tool that they requested us basically to upload the PDF, and then we can find which part are the mathematical formulas, and we can generate all the Python code for these basically math formulas. And of course, we can like have summary over this document in terms of like different angles of that paper. And behind this, we have built a tool that is a very strong PDF layout parsing. So this is a example that is parsing not like an academic document, but a financial report. You can see this is by UBS, and we can parse out the part related to the like different chunks, especially like we can very accurately figure out which part is a table and which part is basically the footnote to the table. And this helps our model to do very accurate understanding of like a very complex like 30-page financial PDF. Yeah, so the first thing we build is to apply this technology onto academic PDF, and now we're moving towards a private financial PDF.
Totally. Okay, so let's say, like, from a technology perspective, if the audience are non-technical, can you explain, like, how are you leveraging the existing AI technology to your current product? And basically my question is, like, when you're thinking about, like, other companies who are doing similar things, what is your comparative advantage? And, let's say if someone is trying to copy this idea, like, what are things that they need to do to actually get there? Like, I mean, what are your basically the, unfair
Technical
advantage
mode,
in that,
right?
technical moat, yeah.
Yeah. I think one clear advantage is we have already been working with a lot of institutional investors who are willing to share us some of their private data, including their investment memo, their like internal written like analyst report, and a lot of that means heavy trust onto our startup, and that kind of trust are very hard to build for a new company. Another part is the domain knowledge we accumulated throughout the way. It is actually very, very hard to understand for what kind of question, where do you seek the trustworthy public data, and furthermore, where do you find the private data? And this kind of like data path knowledge is also like accumulated through time. And some of that accumulation has happened throughout all my previous job and experience, and also our team's previous experience. And we slowly start from there and progress towards where we are right now, which is like basically having clients giving us insights and iterate with them. So I guess for a new startup, they need to replicate that whole path of having like founding team with strong domain knowledge to start with, to gain the trust of clients, and then to build a good product that can iterate with these clients and create value for them. So basically, someone can do it, but it will take
A
time.
long
And
time,
also,
yeah.
they need to understand AI, I guess, right? If they just don't understand AI and only know how to call, like, say, GPT wrappers, it's probably not going to succeed.
I wonder when, like, Bloomberg has Bloomberg GPT. So what is your, like, I guess, comparative advantage when it comes to, like, a big company that they already have their own data, especially like they have all the data. So, like,
Yeah.
what's your comparative advantage in terms of in this situation?
Yeah, so Bloomberg is definitely a very big player in the market. They produce a lot of data and they have so many users. So we're definitely not trying to enter a position to compete with them. But I think the angle we attack this problem is very different. We work mostly with the buy side. The buy side is like people who do like asset management, wealth management, and people who do hedge funds. And we try to go deep into the day-to-day workflow of the buy side people, try to like act as part of the function of their like junior analyst, and sometimes work as kind of a co-pilot to their portfolio manager, and occasionally work as basically the portfolio optimization engine to generate a portfolio from their own like ideas. So all these steps are something that Bloomberg are not going to participate because they have a very successful business as kind of data provider, right? So they do ChatGPT style Bloomberg GPT that is primarily focusing on revolutionizing their own UI, which currently is like relying on you to memorize so many different kind of shortcuts, like Control F helps you do this, and Control Shift blah helps you do that, all that things, and help you to avoid all the heavy customization of having like 6 computer monitor showing different piece of like Bloomberg terminals. So I think that's where Bloomberg is trying to address their problem, right? It's like having natural language search entire site of Bloomberg, which I think is already a very important revolution for Bloomberg, and they should do this. And indeed, they were like trying very hard towards that angle. And for us, we do not have such a powerful platform like Bloomberg, and do not have that sales channel. So we have to like dive deep with our clients, the people that work in the buy side, and try to understand how to actually help them and dive deep into their workflow. So if you look at history, startups normally like build on the newest generation things and do not have any of the historical burden, and do not have like 100 different departments trying to like fight for credit. So that's the advantage of like a nimble startup. And of course, big company have like massive reputation and all that. So I wouldn't really say we are like there to compete with Bloomberg. Of course, if people think we are qualified to even compete, I'm actually honored.
When you were thinking about, you mentioned about like, you guys build, you guys work with the buy side, and then you have some existing connections. I wonder like what's your, like, basically, can you chat about the market, the business model? Also, you mentioned about like you're working with some buy side. I think coming from buy side, there's like two major questions. One is like, I feel like, what if you're working with a bunch of company that are like competing with each other, right? And then
Yeah,
another thing is like, um, what are, like, how do you kind of repeat your existing connection? Because each person can only work with so many people, and then it's really hard to, like, sometimes when you're thinking about like selling to many different funds, like people have different needs, as well as like there is, how do you repeat the like introduction, or in a way to like get in front of all these like big clients?
yeah,
We
yeah.
can start from the market first.
Yes. So first, I guess uh, let me answer the repeat question, since that's kind of pretty common question, right? So you start with kind of a founder lead sales that we get to like the people we know, and they have some inherent trust to us. So the process is bootstrap, right? You start from them, and then you collect some private data that is very hard to collect for like anyone you don't know. And then you build your product, and your product gets better, and slowly the product itself start to speak. And when you get to a new client that you never know, they look at your product and they decide to use or not use. So you basically need to iterate with your early clients to the point that you realize, okay, for someone that not even introduced by them, someone like just like come from maybe this podcast, and oh, this is interesting, and let me try. And after they try, they make a quick decision, maybe 10 seconds. Oh, do I want to use it or do I want to leave? Not even like how much I want to pay, just like a very simple, like, does it add value for me? Should I waste my time? Since buy side people's time are kind of valuable. So I think we are focusing on like creating value and give people efficiency improvement. And going back to the first problem, which I think the key question is, if I sell it to multiple competing players, let's say I sell it to like Citadel and Two Sigma. If I sell them like alpha signal, that alpha signal has capacity, and if too many people trade it, the capacity might be used up and the signal might decay. Right? That's kind of a natural concern. So that's a effect we are well aware of. So most of our focus is not to produce like alpha to sell to other people. Instead, we actually give them efficiency tool to help each person create their own ideas and create their own thoughts. For example, in terms of philosophy, like building this question answering product, most of the investment insights come from how you ask the question, right? For example, like you use the Mojaro as a fat-losing drug, or you watch the news and then you decide, okay, let me do a deeper research into this. So it's your like initial idea that differentiate you from other people later. And we are efficiency tool that basically, essentially we give you a car, right? And your idea of like where to go lead to like the driving destination.
So like I'm just putting it in like a non-technical way to talk about like how ChatGPT work from my understanding. So when you're thinking about the natural language processing, it's kind of like how people structure a sentence. Like, for example, there's a cow on a farm, and then after you say there is a cow, and then they will predict on, and then it could be a farm, a table, or whatever. So like basically the AI researcher will label these keyword segments, and then that's how like ChatGPT work. And then can you explain your how does your company work differently than the traditional ChatGPT? Like if I put the same information on ChatGPT, well, I mean, I tested before. Obviously, it was not the same result. I wonder, can you explain what is the um basic concept about it from
Yeah.
a technical perspective?
Let me use very non-technical terms to explain this. So basically, ChatGPT built an engine of a car that
Mm,
is this pre-trained large language model with all the like supervised as the training and all the like reinforcement learning. Um, Anyways, they are massive companies. They build car engines and they sell car engines to the world of developers and the startups. And there are also a lot of other open source engine companies that,
mhm,
like say, for example, Llama or like Mistral that is trying to also open source
mhm,
their engines. The only difference is like a company like OpenAI do not give you the recipe for how they build the engine, and some
mm,
other people also give you like you are able to like open up that engine and
mhm,
see what's inside. But to use that engine, you need to build this concept of agent.
mm,
I a lot of times consider us as an AI agent company that build basically financial investing agent and do different part of the work. Essential agent is like to build a car with this engine and with a lot of other materials, mostly like data and the insights from like interacting with human. Kind of like you were trying to let AI to replicate the work that used to be done by human. For example, you wanted to be able to like use the search as a tool and then uh, like look over multiple private data and then know, uh, for example, in a 80-page SEC filing, which part correspond to like a risk disclosure, which part correspond to those like management guidance. And
mm,
with all those knowledge you read through and then you build all that into either prompts or you build all that into like examples that will be retrieved to fit into the engine. And after you get the engine, you like iterate and use the engine multiple times, potentially even different engines chained together. And then in the end, you potentially will also use some other tools. For example, a portfolio optimization tool where you can either like use an existing tool that is like say, for example, a Python code written by software engineers before, where the large language model just generate a sequence of parameters as input. Or you can even let large language model even create a tool from scratch. If there is some piece of tool that you need, but are not built, you can let large language model use its ability to write code to create a new tool, and then let the engineer evaluate that tool and build it on your pipeline. So
Mm.
in some sense, we're trying to build an agent that knows how to do this workflow.
Mm. So when you mentioned like OpenAI, they're the engine, and then you guys are the agent, meaning like you guys are like basically the engineer who work at like a car company, right? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
like
we build the
correct?
cars. Yeah, they build the engine
Okay.
basically. That's
So I wonder there's a couple things, right? Like, so one thing is, when you're thinking about the most revolutionary companies such as Tesla, like they rethink about how a car works. Um, is there some sort of like risk to it when everyone is depending themselves onto OpenAI's existing engine? And then another thing is like when you guys thinking about which engine to use, like obviously you mentioned about open source engine companies, but why do you choose like OpenAI, and then what is the advantage and disadvantages? We'll start from there.
Yeah, so for us, we try to let our cars not dependent on specific brand of engine. So if OpenAI don't work, which full disclosure, I actually have serious interest in OpenAI being successful. My wife works there, but like let's say they decide, okay, I'm not gonna serve our GPT-5 model like tomorrow. It's okay, we can easily swap to like the next best options on market. So we just choose the best options. So in our business of like serving financial people, it's more important about quality than cost. So in the quality cost trade-off, we select the best on the market. If tomorrow, say like Llama 3 becomes the best, we can immediately switch to Llama 3, and it doesn't hurt us to like do that switch. Probably just like a week of engineer hours, so like adjusting a lot of the setup. And on the other hand, in terms of like the new car, we actually also have to build a part of specialized engine ourselves that no one is going to build for us, which is how to understand the financial time series, all those like tabular numbers, numerical data that exist mostly in finance. It's part of the engine that no one is currently building actively, and we have to build it internally to make our product better. And for those things, we have to basically do research internally. And yeah, that's kind of how we maintain technical edge, but also that's like to serve our clients. We
Mhm.
have to rely on it. We hope some company might just like, hey, we can really do this. But yeah, realistically, like if they don't work in finance, they will not really uh, look at this like financial time series problem seriously. So we basically decided, okay, we have to build this ourselves.
When you mentioned like there's two other things you mentioned, like data and insights, right? I think we had a discussion about like, after you responding, you may invest in like data and like, so I guess like what does that entail? Like what kind of data are you looking at? And like in terms of insights, like what are insights are you trying to acquire?
Data and insight are kind of vague, right? So let me make an example. First, data, like there is a lot of private data that you can buy that contains interesting information. Most well known is that, for example, like credit card data, right?
Mhm.
Can buy credit card data, and a lot of quant fund already buy it to predict, like say, Walmart's next quarter revenue before the actual earning call comes out.
Mm.
So we are also interested in getting this data so our client can query us to like know all this. This is like data. And in terms of insight, for example, in micro trading, when you're trying to understand the behavior of Fed, Fed make decisions mostly based on data that is public. And the Fed is very actively trying to make all the data about our microeconomy public. So if you go to
Mm.
some like a public website about our microeconomy, you can actually see a lot of economical data about like say unemployment, about PCE, CPI, about like small business sales, small business employment cost, all this. And these are all public data, but it requires very deep knowledge to know which data has what importance and to answer what type of question, where do you go to, which websites have the default data that Fed looks at. Essentially,
Mm.
you want to mimic this kind of domain knowledge. And that's what we are doing with the insight part.
When you are building up this program, can you, instead of like going super into details, can you give us an overview of like how are you leveraging technology to, you know, like modify these like important factors of the information on the internet?
So the first thing we do is verify the quality of this content and try to see whether we can trust it and serve it. Second is we try to compare it with other source to see whether it's contradictory or it's giving something aligned with all the others. That's the first two steps. And then if we decide we trust the data and it even if it has like say a unconsensus result, it's not like random gibberish. It's like actually some analysis that has strong reasoning. We present it together with all the other things and show, hey, there is an inconsistency that might worth noting. It might be like they have a different source of doing the statistics.
Mm. When you're thinking about like, so in terms of like acquiring the data, who or like, in terms of like purchasing these like important information, you mentioned about like maybe credit card information before. And I wonder how are you like who are selling these things and then how much money does these things cost compared to, because we're running a startup here, right? So like how do you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
about the I guess like the go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, yeah. So we try to start with more like long tail set of data, since a lot of institutional places have stuff like Bloomberg, Capital IQ, FactSet.
Mhm.
So we try to like go for the longer tail stuff that they want but do not necessarily have enough engineer powers to handle and buy, and we try to like get those. To say a few others, for example, uh, I guess. Geolocation data and like say maybe satellite image, something on our roadmap. Basically, like you want to do something that people think they might need, but also like do not have the
Mhm.
energy to handle.
What are people doing now? So
You mean
basically you mentioned like, you were leading your team at your previous fund and like how were they working on this problem right like before? And then how will your company change how people interact with both technology and the data and just like producing better results?
Yeah, I can talk about the general quant finance industry as a whole. I think as of at least mid last year, the whole industry is still pretty much like going off to a data vendor, buying whatever data is available and throw them into like a juice blender and say like what come out of the juice blender, and in the middle maybe have a few smart engineers and the quants sit and like say, okay, this fruit doesn't really go into this blender, let's put it into that blender. So it's kind of like a very simplistic approach comparing to what a human investor do, which is like heavily rely on logic and have this chain of thought of like, oh, I like this, like for example, like a small business uh, like confidence is going down, but the employment cost is going up. So there might be a problem with a small business might start to lay off in the future, and that leads to blah and then blah. And then we guess Fed would probably cut rates, right? This is how human thinks, but that's not how any of the quant trading machine can think. So we are trying to like attack that angle.
So make it more humanized.
Yeah. Basically, I would say it in other way, which is the whole goal of, I guess, computer programs is to do things that human do, but like not very efficiently, right? Human are kind of limited by their bandwidth. They need to sleep, and they cannot like parallel process, right? So
So
the whole point is automate. I think just automate more workflow, automate more thinking process.
I
Quant trading
wonder.
automated a small piece, and we want to automate more.
Okay, so I wonder, since like I mean, I'm definitely not an expert in quant fund, but like when I chatted with a lot of investors in the venture capital space, a lot of people were saying that like basically people would when they're thinking about like what industry to look at or um predicting a certain things, people will go to some of the top funds like a Sequoia or like a CNZ's report and look at it, and then or study, let's say the biggest. So like basically go on the Midas list, look at who invests in the best company, and then see what they're investing now, and or like their thought process on like the current market and stuff like that. So what is the equivalent of like the quant funds? So basically, is this like happening in other industry as well? How do you leverage the factor of like basically how do you train the human part of it? Because I feel like you can only judge the results after um an investment already happened after multiple years, especially in the venture industry. But you mentioned like you guys are only looking at the short terms. So I feel like it's really hard to train it as a human because it's really hard to say like who actually have the best idea on like what's gonna make sense in terms of investing. How do you kind of like solve this problem?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, there are like a shorter term investing, there are longer term investing. Right? Traditional quant focus on short term investing mostly for this statistical significance problem. Uh, and for what we do, we indeed like work with some humans that have ideas that are not really back testable and do not have enough statistical significance to put into like a quant trading type of evaluation. That's when we work with a human and try to like learn how they think and basically learn their logic and learn the like workflow that they use. So that part is still like mimicking human. We're not trying to build an AI that from day one can surpass the human yet. So we're still like using this two philosophy. One is if we have enough historical data, we also go back and rely on statistical significance based on history. We also like do a little bit of, let's assume, uh, we just look at the back mirror, how much can we get? Another approach is more like closely work with humans that have this strong logical inference ability and ability to make hypotheses and try to say how much can AI help and how much can AI automate.
I feel like it's really hard to quantify, like because let's say, when you look at if like how to get the best human data or like how do you like get the you mentioned like you're working with the best performers in the industry to kind of like mimic what they're doing, right? The problem is like if even like let's say if you ask Warren Buffett like why would you invest in blah blah blah, and I feel like the information was also number one, it's like it may be really dated because of like, sure, there's some investment logic to it. I'm sure you can, train ChatGPT or something to mimic whatever he said. But on the other hand, like if any, like, I guess like, because of like people invest in a deal like a long time ago, it's really hard to actually use the same logic in today's age. And I
Yeah.
feel like the past performance doesn't really speak to future performance. Like I think it's hard to get to train something because also different people have different way of thinking of things. That's why, even some of the best investor miss like, people have like a anti-portfolio. They miss like the Airbnb or Uber or like something in the past. So I wonder like how do you like is there a challenge in terms of like training the AI to become more like a better investor? Like what are some kind of like benchmarks that you would use to say actually this is better?
Oh, actually, yeah. In first of all, there's two questions. First is what if domain like the market shift and the old styles of investing do not work. So this is not something we are trying to address. This is actually the fun of the market. The market is very dynamic, and the way to win the game always change. And we are not trying to build a one AI that just win this game. And I don't think that's possible with the current technology. So what we are doing is trying to like mimic more styles of investing, so that we can basically cover as much ground as possible and try to be like 70% of the best humans ability and automate that. That's our goal of this stage at least. And by diversification of different styles, you actually get AI that is fairly useful. That's why there is a lot of platform shops like Millennium, like Citadel, that hires so many different discretionary portfolio managers that trade on very different style, and they have each person might have a giant drawdown, lose a lot of money in some year, but when you look at the aggregate performance, it looks pretty well. That's like the mathematics behind diversification. That's about the investment style. And about the benchmark, that's like in terms of like quant trading type of like a statistical testable ideas, we also use the back test. We also use all the Euro drills to evaluate. And for the part, for example, the question answering bot, it's actually a generically hard question in generative AI that people don't know how to evaluate things. So occasionally people release some benchmark. For example, in finance, recently there is a news that is saying like AI cannot answer SEC questions. There is like 150 SEC question as a benchmark data set published one of the other AI startup. And there's a big splash of news. They tested GPT-4, they tested like Llama, they tested Anthropic's model, and none of them performed very well on this SEC benchmark. So we get quite interested because it's kind of valuable to have like public benchmark to play with. So we spent some engineering effort to do that benchmark, and it turns out, yeah, our agent are able to do it pretty well on this SEC question. So with the ground truth answer, it's more like finding the right answer type of question that the answer lives somewhere in that SEC filing, and you have like a ground label. So those like intermediate tasks that like search and stuff, you can actually improve your AI. And then maybe your AI is not necessarily going to be a very good investor, but it indeed would improve the productivity of people who use it. And that's pretty reassuring. We just want to see some metrics slowly like moving towards the better end, and that is aligned with our end goal. Then it's good, right? You can never really hope you build the ultimate investing bot.
Okay, so how big is tech plays into these funds? So why I'm asking is, let's think about like, when you think about like Lululemon, like think about the technical team there. It's probably not playing like a super huge part as like, sure, you have to make sure the website doesn't crash when you are on like a Black Friday sale or something. But in general, it's not like their major investment area. But how does tech plays into the finance firms, or is this like only a few big firm that they are paying attention to technology and everybody else will just use like, I don't know, chat GPT or something less
I think,
basically less
yeah.
like serious? Yeah.
First of all, about ourselves, we are clearly like very heavy invested in tech, and the most energy I spent is on recruiting, like find the best talent, and we so far are able to assemble like a very strong team, and we have a lot of amazing people that are working with us. Like some from like Meta's ads machine learning team that used to like generate 100 billion revenues for Meta. Now like work for us. So it's really, really exciting to work with them. I think that's the number one secret to success, is work with the smart, best people on technical side. In general, I guess that's work with the best people, but technical side is probably even more important in the early stage. And in terms of the whole market, I think the market is very different, and both in time and in terms of category. So first, in time, I think the heavy investment to tech happened over the last probably 10, 20 years and is clearly accelerating. The strongest hedge fund like Citadel and Rentech are clearly investing a lot of tech, right? So they are founded by more like mathematician type of people.
What is
And
I guess like what is the typical ticket size are we talking about? Because when you guys first started, you guys like were selling a very different product, or like based on the pricing, it seems like it's a very different product than many of the bigger players. And I wonder like, how much money will these like big funds spend on a tool like this? And what's your like go-to-market strategy based on the spending?
so it depends on how much value you can really create to them. I think of like this sales as more like you capture a percentage of the value you create for them, and initially you will focus on create value for them, and then go to like measure the value, and then prove the value, and then discuss a ratio of cut. I think of this as a process like that. And now because the technology is fast moving and we are focusing on just the first big factor, which is how do we grow inside, basically do more things for them, automate more work, and then create more value. And then when we get to be more sticky and truly like prove the value, then we'll get to like figure out what percentage to cut. So initially, I think it's okay to just have a little bit of like a coverage of fees to basically cover the ground and try to get deeper into these organizations.
How much are they spending on the technical team and compared to their whole like yearly spending? Is that like 10%, 20%, or is that 80%? And what does 80% means? Is that like are you guys gonna charge people for like millions of dollar like for let's say 30 spot on the seat? Or you mentioned like there's a like basically the value creation ratio cut. So basically, if you generated, let's say, like $100 million for this fund, and then you're getting a 10% cut or something like that. How is people currently measuring these impacts right now? Basically, how much are they paying their current engineering team, and then also like how much, um, I guess like if using you guys, how much do you think that you're predicting that they're going to save, and where are they saving from?
So first of all, we're not trying to replace their internal engineering team, right? That's like a
Mhm.
hard task, and it shouldn't be where you go. Where we go is trying to basically automate some of the very manual work that their non-technical people do. Like they're like a first year intern from like maybe like UT Austin finance or UT Austin econ. That's probably like the example of like task that we are trying to automate. And for those work, it's originally not a tech budget, right? Originally, they pay those to analysts, and they probably need to hire more analysts to do all those work. And sometimes a company have fixed budget, and they cannot get all the resources they want in terms of like analysts and also like they also cannot get the speed they want, even if they hire like a few hundred people. Like they cannot like get this document in the next 2 minutes, right? So like a human have a natural speed limit. So
Mhm.
that's where we go after to like basically automate the things and basically help them become more efficient and take away a lot of the most boring working hours from their low level workers.
Mm. There's hi Jiri, nice to meet you. So like there's like audience questions. How do they account for broad and sudden risk, like natural or human caused disasters that can happen suddenly, but there are some pre precedents?
Okay, let me try to understand this question. So I would say, how do we handle the long tail, like rare event risk in terms of can our engine kind of identify and spot this? So in some scenario, our engine can. For example, one of the real query that our users ask about is analyze, say, NVIDIA's A100 and like H100 GPU sales, and in general, the data center revenues. And our AI identified a major risk, which is kind of the ban towards like shipping towards China, right? So there is a ban. When they start ask this question, NVIDIA is still producing like A800 to China, which is like a downgrade version of A100 that is still like bought by a lot of AI startup in China. And our AI basically did this counterfactual calculation that what if A800 is banned again, how much revenue would NVIDIA lost? And in less than a month, that ban actually happened. So investors are very happy that we kind of make that assumption and that type of calculation for them. So that's the type of, I guess, sudden risk we can handle. In terms of the AI can understand some of the logic and do some what if consideration.
Mm, awesome. So like I want to also ask like how do you kind of evaluate success in your current company? And then like if it fails, like why would it be why like what reason do you think it will fail?
I mean, startup can fail in so many reasons, so it's very hard to
Mhm,
predict. Yeah,
mhm,
hopefully, I think the game is just to live longer and try to avoid all the reasons. But yeah,
mhm.
it can like a basic as any startup, right, it can die anytime. Yeah, and in terms of uh, like what I think is the most uh, interesting challenge. One is uh, I think the financial industry is kind of industry that is requires relatively strong large language model to serve. I think even GPT-4 is not completely at the caliber to like serve the like a really complicated investment logic generation part. And we are working very hard to push the frontier, but also dependent on how the whole field moves, right? It's like how fast can the whole like AI community move in terms of like yeah, like what kind of new capability might come out next year, and we're trying to like also sit on top of the wave and also predict where the wave is going, and try to not develop where the whole like open source community is going, and try to wait for the results and only develop things. For example, how to analyze financial time series, which no one is gonna push for us. We just push those since we only have limited resource, right? We need to basically make bets on how the world is changing and how the world will look like in the next 2 years, 1 year, and then next half year, then maybe for the long run, like next 5 years, if we can survive all the way to next 5 years. So like this multi-horizon forecast that we need to do and need to make our strategic decision align with those. So that's one of the interesting challenges. Another is of course like distribution, go to market. Yeah, we uh, also like actively experimenting with different approach of go to market and also looking for the great talent along that line. And I think a third challenge is probably every single startup face, which is like getting good talent, right? In terms of that, you are not competing with like a startup in your field, but basically competing also with like OpenAI, competing with like Google DeepMind, competing with like Facebook, Meta's AI team, competing with NVIDIA, competing with all the hot startup, maybe like let's say like whatever like video AI company or whatever like search AI company, like name like all the possible competitors for talent. And also you're competing with people like Citadel, Two Sigma, who are like traditional quant hedge fund, but also attracting AI talents.
When you're thinking about like how can this tool to help like a regular person, what is like the use case for regular people? And then do you guys charge the tool for regular people for now? Um, yeah.
So currently for the bot we put on the website, like everyone is welcome to try and play out. We didn't spend much effort on like basically distributed towards the more like prosumer community yet, since we want to like first make it like a more like a online conversion for like institutional clients initially, and we just like let people use like word of mouth spread over like different institutional clients, like people working some uh, like a firm tried our bot and liked it and tell it to all their other friends working other firms, and it spread this way. That's why we put like a free product that everyone can play out right now. And if you are listening to this podcast, that means like you should also like try our product, and it's free now. So like, just try to play with it and give us feedback.
Amazing. Actually, I love the product. Okay, on that note, Bill, where can we find you?
Oh yeah, you can email me at bill@gralpha.ai.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Yeah, thanks.